Anesthesiologists, what are the best things people have said under the gas? My 9-year son going under for his MRI that would show if he would need his right leg amputated at a hip. Just as he slipped under. I am a brave boy. I am a brave boy. Dang. Broke me then. Breaks me now typing this. What a kid. He is a brave boy. I had a colonoscopy just last month and the lady who administered the propofol and I had a brief conversation like this. Me. How long is it gonna take to kick in? Her. You'll be out in less than 10. I always win. With a big grin on her face. I started to feel it immediately after that and followed with, you'll never take me down. I then recall laughing like a maniac. Followed by nothing. I think her quip about always winning and obviously the propofol got me good haha. I was semi-awake during a hand surgery. The only person I could see was the anesthesiologist. I remember telling him some jokes while I lay there. Then I remember hearing the doctor chuckle on the other side of the curtain. Followed by would you put her the frick out then blackness. I often have wondered if my hand would work better now if I weren't so dang hilarious. Not an anesthesiologist but was a tech. Had a patient wake up violently. When he came to he said, sorry, I thought I was a shark. Happened today. Patient has a broken ankle fixed and was coming out of anesthesia when he was being wheeled out. The anesthesiologist accidentally hit the door frame on the way out. Patient, did you just do surgery on my leg? Anesthesiologist, yes you had surgery and are waking up from it. Patient, then why are you running into things? Fantastic. Not an anesthesiologist but my tight-laced, extremely Christian great-grandma apparently asked who the frick is that ugly son of a bee while she was waking up from a surgery. The person she was referring to? Her preacher who stopped by to check up on her. She never lived that one down. The story was even told at her funeral. She was kinda strict but she was a great lady with a great sense of humor. Not gas, but right after giving my dazzleam I had a patient say wow, this feels like the 70s, and have had quite a few old men ask me out on a date before passing out a few seconds later. When I came out of surgery at 14 I told everyone I was fine and just felt like a Gatorade. Mum got it for me, opened the lid and handed it over. I took it and maintaining direct eye contact with her I tipped it upside down nowhere near my mouth. Got Gatorade all over me and was super confused. That's where my memory ends. Mum tells me after looking briefly confused I just shrugged and settled back down to fall asleep. I had surgery last year and when waking up they had a communal room where around 7-8 people would all be waking up at the same time before being sent to individual rooms for some reason. I remember waking up slowly and hearing someone else being asked if they wanted some water. For some reason this really excited me. Like, there was nothing more in the entire world I wanted than to be asked if I wanted water. I practically yelled, or as much as I could yell in that state, hey, ask me if I want water, and I'm pretty sure it came out in a let me speak to your manager tone, but I was just so excited about the water. Anesthesiologist here. I was once transporting a patient to the ICU after surgery, in which he got some ketamine, and he was rocking out the entire way there with his air guitar. My anesthesiologist tried to calm me down with a joke when I was a little kid being put under. My mom later told me about how I apparently commented on the joke being not at all funny and how I hoped he was more talented as a doctor. Mine kept telling dad jokes and I apparently said thank God I'm going to be unconscious soon as a critique of his jokes. I was the patient. After I had my wisdom teeth removed, I remember trying to drink some water, spilling it all over myself, and then crying, asking who took my water. Patient. Woke up halfway through a colonoscopy and asked the gastroenterologist if he'd removed the arsegoblin yet. My dad's an anesthesiologist. He was treating a woman, and he said, I'm putting you to sleep now. She replied with the most horrified look on her face, like a dog. I was coming out of general anesthesia after a surgery to repair a broken leg. I woke up in my room with about a dozen very caring, kind friends and relatives who had all come to see that I was okay. I looked around, saw everyone giving shoots about me, said, frick this, loudly and very clearly, and went right back to sleep. My friends thought it was hilarious. My mom was mortified. Backstory, I have epilepsy and a vagal nerve stimulator to control the seizures. It works wonders. From 3 to 4 seizures a week to almost none a year. I went in for the replacement of my device. Going under, I looked at my mother and started laughing hysterically. She asked what was funny. I said she had horns. And as I was coming out of all the drugs, the nurse was kind of a jackass to me, so I said, "Oh man, the next time I puke I'm gonna puke on you." I did. He said, "Man, your aim is good. I'm not even mad at you." 2 of my fav. Both patients coming out of anesthesia. Am I in heck? I responded, "No, you're not. You're just in recovery." That sounds like something the devil would say. Count backwards from 100 to prove it. Or the one who stroked my unshaved arm while I was trying to keep him from pulling at his IV. And muttered, "You'd make such a great carpet." ETA. Yikes, you people really like hairy arm carpets. I love the implication that the devil can't count backwards. I'm an anesthesiologist. I was recently taking care of a 17-year-old kid and he looks at me and says, "Dude, I am high as frick." They almost never remember it afterward. Me after getting my wisdom teeth taken out. Nurse warned my mom that I'd probably be saying some crazy crap until I came down fully, which I thought was total bulls, as I was super lucid, felt like I could walk around fine, and was slightly annoyed, but understood when they loaded me in the wheelchair. They clearly told me that I couldn't eat solid food, how to treat the massive holes in my gums, etc. However, I was craving a Pop-Tart, like needed one ASAP, mouth drooling, probably actually bleeding, but whatever, and having in-depth fantasies of going to town on the largest pack I could find. Quite conveniently in the car on the way home, I discovered nothing else but a cookies and cream Pop-Tart pack. I'm seriously making sweet mouth love to this pastry, never happier, until I remember I'm not supposed to eat solid foods. I shamefully tell my mom the news, and that she has to take my brief, but delicious love away from me. I specifically remember saying, "It's for the greater good," so I'm trying to hand her my Pop-Tart from the back seat, while she's driving on the highway no less, when I realize the Pop-Tart isn't there. The Pop-Tart never existed, besides in my mind. She says, "Okay, Tolkien." I got to honey, and I reply, "The Pop-Tart was fake, wasn't it?" I giggled for a bit, then went back to doing whatever the heck I wanted in my head. Fun times. 10/10 would do again. By the time I had a C-section, I'd been in labor for 36 hours, awake for 48, had pushed for 4 hours and was exhausted and super out of it. I remember the doctor holding up this baby-shaped object and I said to my husband, "Is that the baby?" "Never mind, it's not." And he said, "Actually yes, that's our baby," and then I started arguing with him and telling him I was positive that wasn't the baby and he had no proof it was. Spoiler alert, it was the baby. In high school I had a reconstructive surgery on my knee as I tore my ACL and meniscus in a sports injury. After the surgery I woke up in post-op, which was a fairly large room with probably 6 to 7 other patients in beds waiting to become conscious again. I was lying there all groggy and confused when 2 nurses walked over pushing one of those carts with a computer on it. They stood over me and were typing into the computer when one nurse said to the other in a sort of frantic whisper, "We've got to plug this thing in or this one is going to die." Naturally, semi-conscious me thought that the thing was me and I started to incoherently yell for the nurses to unplug whatever they needed to in order to find an outlet to keep me alive. Turns out it was the battery on the laptop that was going to die. Apparently the death rate for an ACL repair is pretty low. We used to call those carts cows, computer on wheels, but apparently patients don't like it or think we're talking about them, so we aren't supposed to anymore. During my wisdom teeth surgery they were playing music, and Billy Jean comes on. I said glad Michael Jackson could join us, and that was the last thing I remember. My husband went under last year, and once he woke up, by our appearances he was as sober as a church mouse, walking, asking serious questions of the doctor, apparently no issues at all. He remembered the procedure and described it to me in detail. I figured he just never went completely under. He was craving Chinese food, and nothing would do except for buffet, so we headed down and loaded up our first load of plates. Evidently, he actually woke up from the anesthesia at the buffet. As far as he remembers, he was put under and woke up in front of a plate of chicken teriyaki on a stick. Okay, that's wild lol. After getting my wisdom teeth removed I looked at my mother-in-law and said, "How did you get on my rocket ship?" After my wisdom teeth removal, I woke up babbling about pink Cadillacs. When I was about to go out for surgery, they were strapping me down and told me it was so that I'd fall off the table. My last words were, "It's okay. 5-second rule." Thank God. After 5 seconds they would have had to toss you. Jeremy the intern though might have kept you though, that gross MF. Not an anesthesiologist, but my husband kept telling the medical staff after his procedure that it's okay. My wife's a doctor. She knows what you're talking about. I'm a lawyer. I was the patient. I was getting my gallbladder removed, and as they were wheeling me back, I started to cry and said, "I'm gonna wake up with my lips stitched to someone's butthole." When I got put under for a colonoscopy, I didn't really fall asleep during the countdown. I just looked at the nurse a bit confused and said, I don't notice anything. And she smiled and squeezed my wrist and said, "Just give it a moment." As soon as she said that, I started fading out, and according to her the last thing I mumbled was, "Oh, that fricked, you magic witch." When they told me to start counting, I apparently counted for 45 seconds before I went out, but I only remember the first 10 lol. Last year they were knocking me out for a colonoscopy. It was the third time I had been put under in a year. As such, I had a curiosity. I had heard that when they knock you out you are still awake for a while. You just don't remember. So in the spirit of science, I proposed a test with the anesthesiologist. When she started the medicine, I would begin counting backward. When I would wake up, we would compare what I remembered to what she observed. Plunger down 99, 98, 97. I remembered nothing more. Minutes later I awoke. The anesthesiologist espied me and came over quickly. "What did you remember?" she asked. 97. She began laughing. "You got down to 7. That's awesome." I had a patient start to joke before surgery and finish it when they woke up without prompting. I can just imagine it going like, "What do you call a guy W a rubber toe?" Hours later, Roberto. I went under for a nasal canal surgery, and apparently after the surgery I was holding the nurse's hand and repeating, "I love you, don't leave me," over and over. I had a patient coming out of anesthesia who opened his eyes as I was switching him from a mask to nasal cannula. "Tell me this hospital has the most beautiful women I've ever seen." Made me blush. I was so flattered, and made the rest of my day awkward with my co-workers teasing me about it. "Whoever you are, sleepy man, I simultaneously thank you and hate you." I was given a relaxer prior to colonoscopy and was rolled into the room. Doctor asked me what I had done that weekend. I said I went to the MN State Fair. "Oh," she says, "eat anything interesting?" I said, "Why don't you tell me?" No laughter whatever in the room. And then I was out. I swear she gave an extra shove because I half woke up during the procedure and remember groaning. My cousin had a similar experience before his colonoscopy. They gave him the relaxer and he then started calling his gown his dress and kept trying to cover his butt because it's not time for his close-up yet. Not an anesthesiologist. The anesthesiologist that came in to check me over had bright blue teeth and lips. Keep in mind I was high as frick. I asked him how Smurfette was last night. I passed out hearing the nurses laughing. My wife is an anesthesiologist and her best line from a patient is, "This is better than M." Not an anesthesiologist, but I knew a guy who had surgery and afterwards wanted to go home. He wasn't recovered enough to, and the nurse wasn't gonna let him get up yet. He turned to the nurse and said, "You may not realize this, but I'm a ninja and we heal 3 times faster than normal people." At that the nurse stopped trying to keep him in bed. He stood and immediately ate the floor. Floor. My dad works with that stuff. Funniest thing he's heard is, "Hey Mr. Doctor, my butt itches and I'm too high to scratch." I was about to be put under for a colonoscopy while the nurse was trying to position me in a way to make it easiest for them to work. I had my knees to my chest and was passing out from the gas when I asked the nurse to paint me like one of her French girls, then passed out. Still makes me cringe. Funny AF though. I was a patient. I went in the get a MRI at 7. They injected me with something and I said, "Wow, that made me really sleepy." Then the doctor said, "Sucker shouldn't be able to talk." I still haven't told anyone I remember that. I'm pretty sure my mother was in the room, but IDK. Woke up after wisdom teeth surgery alone in a small recovery room. I called out for my mom and dad, and when they didn't immediately come to my side, I called out for Captain Kirk. My fiancé and I had broken up within the last week and was still dealing with that horribly. I was on pain meds for my shoulder and was scheduled for surgery in the current week. The day of the surgery, I was to get a nerve block. The anesthesiologist was the one performing the nerve block. He and I were chit-chatting, and he was just a really comforting person. He was telling me about everything that was going to go on during the surgery. Then we were just chit-chatting about life when the topic of the breakup came up. He was even comforting with that. So after that, I was wheeled into surgery. He was there to put me under, which for some reason put me at great ease. As I was going under, I guess I started talking through the mask and he lifted the mask to hear what I was trying to say. When I boldly stated I still love you, fiancé's name, while holding direct eye contact with him. I didn't know I did it. Not until he visited me in recovery. He said thanks for the nickname, then told me what I said. I guess the entire surgical staff referred to him by my fiancé's name for the duration of the surgery. So not only did I call this poor guy a woman's name that stuck with him for the duration for the surgery, I stated how much I loved him to boot. When I went back for the second surgery, guess who my anesthesiologist was? Regardless of my foul ups, he is an awesome anesthesiologist and really good at his job. My wife couldn't take me for my first colonoscopy due to work, so my mother did, and apparently coming out of anesthesia, when they were removing my IV, I told the nurse, "Oh, that's neat. I've taken a lot of those out, but I've never had it done to me, and my patients are always dead." Apparently she looked very concerned by this information, and my mother had to explain that I've been a licensed funeral director for many years and hospitals and other facilities often do not remove tubing. Apparently I then followed that up by telling the young nurse she had a nice butt, but not as nice as my wife's. My mother felt free to share that with everyone. So yeah, I creeped out a nurse by talking about my occupation, and then even more by commenting on her butt in a backhanded compliment. I broke my hand tumbling once and had to get surgery. He goes to put the mask on my face and says this is oxygen. I cough as the mask goes on. He pulls the mask away and I said I trusted you. You lying frick. That's the last thing I remember. Not an anesthesiologist, but when I severely dislocated and broke my knee, I apparently gave one of the doctors that was just finishing resetting my leg a huge slap on the back and yelled it's fixed. You guys are the best doctors I've ever seen. Giving a 5-star review. Wife said the nurses were cracking up. I'm a pretty big guy and the doctor I gave the friendly pat on the back was a relatively small dude. When I had a cavity filled a few years ago, I vaguely remember hugging one of the doctors after waking up. As an added bonus, I apologized to my parents because I didn't think I could drive. I was too young to drive at the time. Nurse anesthetist here. When I was in school I was getting ready to get a lady off to sleep and going through my regular spiel. I had the mask on her face and I said nice big breaths as I pushed propofol. Right before she went out she said thanks. I just had them done. I looked at my preceptor, we looked at the circulator, and we all burst out laughing. I now say slow deep breaths instead. I love telling that story. That lady made all our days. This is hilarious. I could easily see this being on a show like Scrubs. Before my emergency appendectomy and right as they wheeled me away, I grabbed my husband and said, very loudly, "Don't forget to tell them our backup plan. If this crap goes south, I want my legs and arms removed so you can carry me around in a backpack." The student doctor accidentally wheeled me into the wall cause he was laughing so hard. You have been visited by the party pug. He just wants you to celebrate with him. Comment woohoo to celebrate with the party pug. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.